getting treated by dad at your age. Mr. Unemployed, huh?
When I went to a high-end sushi restaurant with my dad, we ran into the interviewer who had rejected me during a job interview. Noticing me, he mockingly said that he seemed unaware. Unaware of who the unemployed guy he was mocking, and the dad he was ridiculing, really were. Sure enough, right after he said that, my father burst out laughing and said,
You're the one who's going to be unemployed.
Despite his gentle tone, the content was quite menacing, and the interviewer couldn't quite grasp it.
Huh?
He blinked in confusion, looking utterly baffled. And as soon as the words reached his brain, he exploded in anger.
What? I'm unemployed. You have no right to say that.
Unfortunately for him, by the time he regretted his words, it was already too late. My name is Thomas Sanders. I'm 50 years old and currently unemployed. Though jobless, I was the acting CEO until I was turned down during a mid-career interview. Yes, I'm actually the heir to a major restaurant chain. And beside me, seemingly mild-mannered, is my dad, who is none other than the founder and, in essence, retired, but is actually the current chairman. My dad is known in the industry as a pioneer who built a huge restaurant chain from scratch. Starting with a successful ramen stall, he quickly expanded to several locations, turning it into a chain. He personally scouted talented chefs and ventured into French, Italian, and various other cuisines. One of these ventures is this sushi restaurant. Today, we were having a father-son meal combined with a business consultation. Originally, I learned business management at the headquarters of my father's vast chain. My dad, my own flesh and blood, didn't allow me any slack. I started as a regular employee, went around the field, and began by understanding each job from the ground up. Through hard work, I finally earned the position of vice president on my own merits. However, after 30 years with the company, I began to feel unsatisfied. I didn't want to be seen as the boss's son or riding on parental coattails, so I worked tirelessly. After 30 years of relentless effort, I realized I had turned 50. I suddenly stopped and thought, is sitting in this chair really what I wanted to do? When I first joined the company, I was part of the management strategy department, traveling to various locations and learning a lot. Running desperately from store to store, time flew by. I would identify the issues of underperforming stores and intervene. Just by fixing a slightly misplaced button, a store would regain its shine and feel reborn. Inside, full of bright, happy smiles and bustling with lively noise. Watching the revived hustle and bustle of these places, I felt a profound sense of joy. As I climbed the ranks, my workplace shifted from the field to this small square office called the President's Room. All day long, I would make calls, check documents, and stare at the computer. Gradually, I could no longer remember the excitement about work, the feeling of fulfillment when sinking into bed exhausted but satisfied after a hard day. I became unbearably restless. I wanted to return to the field to regain that old sense of purpose. However, for the president of the parent company to meddle in the management strategy of a subsidiary might be confusing on the ground. I wanted to start over as just another individual. Sir, I'm sick of this chair. To regain my field instincts, may I take a leave of absence? You're free anyway, right? It's originally the chair you sat in. Can you keep it warm while I'm away? To this, my dad just grinned.
Looking so bored, I wondered when you'd say that. Go ahead, I'll sit here while you're gone.
Thus, I slightly doctored my resume and decided to return to my old nest after 30 years, interviewing for a mid-career position in the branch's management strategy department. It may sound self-congratulatory, but I think my background is sufficient. I omitted my tenure as president, but I kept the rest of my career progression unchanged, only altering the company names to a friend's company's management strategy department. Not to toot my own horn, but if I were the interviewer, would hire someone with this background on the spot. However, the interviewer, who introduced himself as Daniel, frowned as he looked over my resume.
Look, just because you've had impressive jobs before doesn't mean you can act big here. Everything you've done is in the past. Right now, you're just unemployed. Why did you decide to become unemployed at 50? I'll ask plainly, did you cause any problems at your previous company?
I hadn't expected him to be so skeptical, but I thought his question was fair, and I gave him the answer I had prepared. At my previous company, we mainly dealt with Chinese cuisine. But here, you've expanded into French, Italian, and Japanese cuisines, right? That's what piqued my interest. I wanted to try developing strategies for a variety of restaurants, not just Chinese. That's why I decided to resign at 50 and would like to work for your company. Then Daniel said in an astonished tone,
You say you resigned, but weren't you actually fired? Otherwise, why would you consider re-employment at your age? We prefer hiring younger people rather than seniors. Hiring an old guy like you would just mean you'd retire soon anyway. I'm still in my 40s. What we want isn't an old but competent worker, but young people we can easily manage. You wouldn't like being bossed around by someone younger, right? I want to hire someone younger who will listen to me well.
Then, lowering his voice a bit, Daniel continued. This must be his true feeling.
It doesn't matter about skills. I want someone I can use freely as my hands and feet. I don't need someone who thinks too much. Just move as I say, and be a piece that helps boost my performance. So, you're not hired. Maybe you should go back and beg your old company to rehire you, LOL. Well, they'll probably say they don't need you anymore.
I couldn't interject a word. To be honest, I was quite disappointed. When did this place go to pot like this? He might indeed be capable of doing his job. Rather, he might be good at using his subordinates like limbs. In fact, since he became a manager, the stores that were struggling with sales have quickly recovered. However, he was someone who couldn't see people as people. He was just using his subordinates as tools for his own ends. No matter how capable you are, this isn't how you cultivate people. If something happened to him, everything he was holding up would crumble. A department that can't cultivate its successors is fatal in a company. I was disillusioned. I could feel my excitement rapidly withering. Actually, I had been looking forward to meeting him. I wondered what someone who could turn around stores like this thought. And how he worked. I had been eagerly anticipating working under him. Seeing me downtrodden, Daniel must have thought I was depressed about failing the interview. Instead of comforting me, he added insult to injury.
You should have thought about this before becoming unemployed, old man. Did you really think you'd get in from the start? That's way too overconfident. I don't know about the past, but it's not that easy nowadays.
Saying this, he sat on the desk and continued, swinging his legs.
If you don't make an effort to protect your position like I do, more capable people are just a nuisance. Knock down the outstanding ones. Keep only those who are useful to you. That's the secret to surviving. Remember that.
Without saying a word, I walked away from there. The interview ended disappointingly, but I didn't care anymore. For a different reason than initially intended, I had regained my motivation. While I've been stuck to the desk, the field has completely changed. The numbers we see aren't everything. Now, I must revamp the management strategy department. Not only that, but I should investigate other departments for any signs of decay. We urgently need to set up an audit office at the headquarters. That same day, I called my dad to discuss this matter. It happened at the high-end sushi place. As my dad and I were winding down our talk and starting to enjoy the sushi, I noticed the restaurant was noisier than usual. This place, being a high-end sushi restaurant, is usually frequented by people of certain status. Because of that, the kind of noise and commotion you find in casual eateries is generally absent here. Customers, knowing the drill, quietly enjoy the delicious sushi and sake, exchanging subdued conversations. That's the norm here. However, as if to shatter that calm, a group entered the restaurant loudly, as if they were coming from a party looking for a place to continue their evening. Both my dad and I frowned slightly, displeased. Then, one of the group pointed at me.
"Hey, you."
I looked up, wondering if I knew such a tactless acquaintance, and it was Daniel.
"You're the unemployed old man who came to my interview today and got rejected. At your age, being treated by daddy, hot, unemployed guy. Well, unemployed. You couldn't afford a place like this, could you?"
Noticing me, he taunted me in a demeaning way. Probably having had a few drinks earlier, Daniel, with a boozy breath and flushed face, slurred his words as he hassled me. Following him were, presumably, what he referred to as his pawns.
Daniel, do you know them?
Seeing us, someone tugged at Daniel's sleeve, looking perplexed.
Let's go over there.
They tried to guide Daniel to the back of the restaurant, but he wouldn't budge. Stopping next to me, he began to demean me cheerfully.
"This guy came for an interview at our place today. Becoming unemployed at 50. He just assumed he'd get in and quit his old job to come to the interview. How can he be so delusional about his own greatness? Don't become overconfident like this guy. You just need to do as I say without thinking."
After saying this to his subordinates, he sneered at me.
"Hey, Mr. Unemployed."
I remained silent. The more he spoke, the more he tightened the noose around his own neck. He was yet to realize. He was mocking me as Mr. Unemployed, and ridiculing my dad as Daddy, not knowing who we really were. Sure enough, right after he said that, my dad burst out laughing and said,
"You're the one who's going to be unemployed."
Daniel seemed unable to catch up with the harsh content hidden behind the soft tone.
"Huh?"
Blinking and looking utterly confused. At his almost innocent expression, I couldn't help but laugh. His subordinates were confused by the exchange. They didn't understand, their eyes darting between us and their boss. When the words finally hit Daniel's brain, he shouted in disbelief.
"What? Me, unemployed? That's a bad joke. And hey, who are you, old man?"
His face turned even redder with anger. He continued to rant, but my dad, as if having lost all interest in him, ignored his existence completely and savored his sushi. That's just the kind of man my dad is. While he's generous at heart, depending on the person, he can be quick to cut ties. Unfortunately, by the time you realize how formidable we are and start regretting it, it's already too late. In fact, just moments ago, we were discussing Daniel. I had told my dad all about what happened at the interview. I expressed my concerns that if things continued this way, the next generation wouldn't develop and the business would eventually fail, and I argued passionately that I wanted to make internal reforms, not just changes at the store. Daniel was the first target of these reforms.
Hey, you've been keeping your emotions in check lately, looking all businesslike, and now you're acting like a young buck. This is a major issue for the company. Do I detect a hint of excitement, or is it just me?
My dad chuckled wryly at my unusually fervent speech. There's a mountain of things that need to be done. If we don't get motivated, there's no future. Of course, I'm getting fired up. I was excited to an almost ridiculous degree. Disappointments caused by Daniel were completely out of my mind. I should be concerned about the decay, but somewhere, I was actually thrilled. It's embarrassing as a business owner. But for the first time in a long while, I felt motivated.
Well, things could probably be managed as they are now. But like you said, maybe we should clear out the pus around here. So I'm still tied to that chair, huh? Looks like it's going to be longer than I thought. It's a shame, just when I thought I'd gotten out.
My dad said this with a grin, seemingly not entirely displeased to be relied upon, and slapped my shoulder.
Well, get to work quickly and wrap this up.
I smiled, feeling vindicated. And just then, Daniel himself showed up, bolstering my story by making one problematic statement after another. Caught by surprise, I couldn't help but smirk, and my dad burst out laughing.
You're the one who's going to be unemployed.
Which led to that statement. After saying his piece, my dad's attention returned to the sushi he was eager to enjoy. It was, after all, exquisite sushi. To leave it would be to let it warm up. Completely ignoring Daniel, we father and son started to relish our sushi. Daniel, who had been ranting, finally snapped and took action.
Hey, are you listening?
Suddenly, he put his hand on my shoulder.
Daniel! What are you doing? Calm down, please.
His subordinates hurriedly grabbed Daniel's arm. Unperturbed by the surrounding panic, my dad casually pulled out a business card holder. He thrust one card towards Daniel. Daniel and his subordinate, who hastily took it, suddenly turned pale.
Our chairman.
They were so shocked they couldn't speak. I smiled at the two of them, ready to drop another bombshell. I apologize, this business card is from before I became unemployed. I will provide you with one for my new position later. I also handed him my business card.
Our president. No way. Why would the president be unemployed? Why did you come to the interview?
Daniel, glancing back and forth between the business card and us, kept repeating the same phrase like a broken speaker. His subordinates, having seen the business card, were visibly shaken, backing away and crouching slightly behind the instigator Daniel. It seems you haven't seen me before as you transferred from another company, Daniel. I've been present at the induction ceremonies, though. With that, his subordinates' eyes widened, as they remembered seeing me at the ceremony. In fact, I was in your department for a while after joining the company. It was very fulfilling and busy, but I enjoyed it every day. Being in the president's office all the time, I suddenly missed the old days and wanted to experience the field atmosphere again. I thought it would be troublesome if I suddenly joined you guys. So, I kept my role as president a secret. I temporarily had the president role handled by the chairman, and now I am unemployed. My resume is true. I did borrow a friend's company name for the employment history, though. Daniel's complexion worsened. He is the type of man who thinks first about boosting his own performance. He must be recalling what he had said and done to me. No matter how much he tries to cover it up, there's no way to make up for what's been said so far. Daniel, my credentials were surely enough for a job change. I don't mean to boast, but as an interviewer, I would have hired me immediately. I have that much experience and achievement. Yet, why did you reject me? I pressed Daniel further. His subordinates listened to the conversation, seemingly puzzled and very interested. You said that competent subordinates are just a nuisance, right? You don't need subordinates who think too much. As long as they act as you say and help improve your performance, that's good enough. The expressions of the subordinates changed. Their faces stiffened as if frozen, and they distanced themselves even more from Daniel. Now, all care and concern for Daniel had vanished from their eyes, clearly displaying disappointment. Look behind you at those guys. They respect you as a supervisor and work hard for you. Can you say the same thing in front of them? Daniel made an embarrassed face.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
I sharply cut off Daniel's excuses. So what did you mean then? You don't want capable subordinates, just pawns that move as you command. That's why you rejected me, someone you couldn't manipulate as you wished. You didn't hire me because it seemed like I might be more competent than you. If you disagree, say so. Daniel's subordinates nodded significantly at my words.
I'd like to hear that too, Daniel. I've always believed that you would trust us more and delegate more responsibilities to us. I even felt inadequate because I thought you were handling everything because we weren't competent enough. Capable subordinates aren't needed? What you wanted was just a pawn.
Now, they no longer hid their resentment towards him. In this situation, Daniel had no allies. Avoiding our gaze as if defeated, Daniel weakly retorted.
I take responsibility. What's wrong with moving subordinates around as you see fit? I'm the top, I just do as I like. And I am delivering results, so there's no disadvantage to the company. Even as the president, you shouldn't blame me.
I sighed deeply and said, it's all disadvantages, Daniel. You might be achieving results now. But what happens when you retire? What happens when you're gone? Have you trained them to take over? Have you taught them the job? Daniel looked up sharply, facing me. I delivered my final ultimatum to Daniel. You don't understand anything about a company. A company isn't run by one person. It continues long after you retire. It's also a supervisor's job to train and educate subordinates so that they can continue. You might be capable of doing your job, but treating subordinates merely as tools makes you unfit as a supervisor. Daniel, you are demoted. Daniel looked back at his subordinates for help, but upon seeing their stern faces, he crumpled in defeat. I decided to ask my dad to keep the seat warm for a little while longer. Dad showed enthusiasm, something he hadn't in a long time.
I'll show you what it means to be a president one more time.
He was fired up. Daniel was dismissed for disciplinary reasons. Even if he hadn't been dismissed, with the complete scorn from the subordinates he treated like pawns, it would have been difficult for him to continue here.
I look forward to seeing what you'll do with all the incompetence left.
He said this in a tone of sour grapes as he gathered his things and left. Afterward, he was looking for a new job but struggled to explain why he had left his previous position. This industry is small, despite appearances. The last job Daniel applied for happened to be at a company owned by a friend of mine. That's when I got a direct inquiry.
Someone from your place who was a manager has applied here. Why did he leave? Do you know anything?
I responded. He lacks the aptitude for leadership. He's a capable worker, though, so if you can train him properly, he might be useful. Could you retrain him at your place? In the end, Daniel was hired as a new employee. He's being worked hard by a younger supervisor.
Why do you try to act on your own? Without teamwork, there's no future in this job. Look around more and act accordingly. Do you think you're something special? We're all teammates here. There's no above or below. I don't care about whatever past glories you had. Right now, you're just a newbie. Can't you cooperate and work with everyone?
He is being thoroughly trained every day.
He's a capable man, so I've put him under one of our top employees.
My friend said, laughing. For Daniel, being in a subordinate role allows him to reflect on how he treated his own subordinates in the past. As for me, I became the head of the management strategy department. I've been instilling work from scratch into Daniel's former subordinates. The subordinates, who are naturally talented and absorb like saplings soaking up water, are growing rapidly. Surrounded by young people who thrive as much as they are taught, I've found great fulfillment. Seeing how vibrant the subordinates have become, it's evident how much their talents were suppressed under Daniel. The subordinates have grown enough now. It seems I'm about to be relieved of my duties soon. Now, let's set up an audit office and start restructuring